Day one of the Lori Vallow Daybell trial begins with an exciting turn of events right out of the gate. This trial is about the conspiracy to murder Charles Vallow. But in the courtroom was Brandon Boudreaux. Brandon Boudreaux is someone who Lori has a trial about next for a conspiracy to murder him that will take place after this trial. And Brandon is in the courtroom. Lori listed him as a witness, but has not subpoenaed him yet. And he, Brandon, wants to stay and wants to watch. The state references Nate Eaton, who Lori also listed as a witness but didn't subpoena, getting to stay and watch. Lori says that Brandon is a relevant witness because of several things. The state says they don't know what things are, so they want to know how he is a relevant witness. Neither side has interviewed him. Lori says he would testify with communications with her husband, but the judge asks how are they not hearsay. The judge asks for what information he would give relevant to the jury in this case. And Lori says that that would give away her entire defense. So that's a big deal. Lori says the relevance is about him coming to do an intervention against her that day. There's a sidebar, which means if you haven't seen about my video about the prep for this trial, the way they're doing a sidebar, because Lori can't approach the judge, is they put on a headset, white noise is played, and they mute the different streams that are playing in the courtroom. This is a long sidebar, so if you're watching the trial itself, you're going to have to skip through quite a bit. The judge eventually comes back. The defense would need to come to him, to the court, with some messages to prove that he's relevant, but the court doesn't find him relevant now. So Brandon is struck from the witness list without prejudice, so he can be put back on later. So if Lori comes up with something, he could be added back, which means Brandon gets to stay and watch for now. And after quite a while handling that, we get the state's opening statement. Now, this is not an exact transcript. This is my notes. It begins right off the bat by reading text messages. So I'm going to need you to stay close to me the next couple of days. Mel too. They're planking some kind of intervention, but want Mel out of the way so I'm left alone. I need to come get the stuff at your house tomorrow and secure it. Lots to do. Thanks for standing by me. It's all coming to a head this week. I will be like Nephi, I am told, and so will you. Lori Vallow wrote this to her brother, Alex Cox, 2 days before they killed Charles Vallow. To understand why this is relevant, you have to understand the context that Lori was already married to Charles Vallow. But she wanted to marry Chad Daybell. And I'm going to apologize for myself and the prosecutor. Throughout this entire thing, I expect Lori Daybell, Lori Vallow, Daybell is going to be interchangeable. Lori wanted to keep the same lifestyle she had with Charles. She could do that if Charles was dead. She would get $1 million life insurance policy and Social Security for herself and her son JJ as a child of a dead spouse. All of this would come true if Charles Vallow was dead. So what about Nephi? Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, and Alex Cox all believed those who disagreed with them were dark, possessed with evil spirits, sometimes called Z's or zombies. They had names for these spirits, sometimes like Ned. Lori, Chad, and Alex used religion, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and Nephi, a prophet directed by the Holy Spirit to kill Laban, to obtain brass plates and secure the long-term prosperity of Nephi's descendants. Lori used this religion and story of Nephi to justify killing Charles Vallow. Lori invoked Nephi in that message to Alex to provide them with the religious authority to kill Charles. Finally, after months of trying to get rid of him, they are ready to be like Nephi. Lori met Chad Daybell in 2018. Chad stayed at Lori's house at one point while Charles was out of town with JJ, and this was during a conference in 2018 that Chad was attending. By January 2019, Lori claimed Charles Vallow was possessed with an evil spirit, calling him Ned. You will see text messages where Lori and Alex refer to Charles as Ned. You will hear from women who met Lori through a conference and were spiritual women who originally found Lori infectious, they started to see red flags. Like Lori was saying she was beyond repenting. That goes against what their religion follows. Sharina Sharp will talk of a girls' weekend that included Lori, where she told them her husband was possessed by an evil spirit named Ned. Charles was no longer in his body. She asked them to come together to cast out the evil spirit. Lori said Charles was already gone. Later that month, Alex Cox sent a message to Lori and said Ned was still alive, just confirmed it. Lori responded, "It's not Ned, it's a new one. Ned is gone." Alex texted that Charles' body is still alive. Lori said she has learned a lot and was still working on it. Alex and Lori became even more determined to get rid of Charles Vallow's body, or whatever they decide to call him. You will hear about Christina Atwood about meeting Alex Cox for the first time. Christina said she heard Alex say he wanted to kill Charles. Lori said she had been drugging Charles by crushing up JJ's pills and putting it into Charles's protein drinks. Christina confronted Lori and said if Charles ends up dead, she will have to go to the police, and Lori said it was all a joke. 1 month later, Lori and Alex created the situation. They could be like Nephi. And they killed Charles. Charles and Lori had been together for a long time. JJ was an adopted member of Charles's family. JJ was everything to Charles, and why him and Lori were still together. Charles knew of Lori's beliefs, and that he called her Ned. He told this to lots of people. On February 26, 2019, Charles made a big decision. He changed his $1 million life insurance policy from Lori Vallow to Kay Woodcock. And Lori had no idea this happened. Charles wanted to bring Lori back to the church and reached out to Lori's brother, Adam. Adam will tell you he heard Lori say things that were simply outside the LDS religion. Lori talking about being translated and Charles was possessed. He knew Lori wasn't following the LDS faith. June 28th, Charles found out Lori and Chad were having an affair. Charles reached out to Lori, Chad's wife, and Alex Cox about it. The police have done many search warrants, phone records, and iCloud accounts included. Some of the things stored on the iCloud accounts might be intentional or, in the words of Sarah Boone, unintentional. Not intentional. After Charles learned about Chad Daybell, Lori made a new iCloud account. Many of the messages that were recovered that you will see in this trial are from those iCloud accounts. Police eventually recovered Charles' cell phone, and you will learn about his text messages to Adam Cox. Adam will tell you they were planning an intervention, recording Lori and confronting the state president about it. I'm assuming state president in this context is a religious figure that I'm not aware of in the Mormon religion. It's also why I'm probably going to mispronounce many of the religious names that are said. Adam agreed to fly to help Lori get back into the faith. Adam and Charles both flew in, and Adam asked Alex Cox to stay with him, and Alex said sure. When Adam flew in, however, Alex didn't respond. Adam didn't know that Alex was summoned to be like Nephi and kill Charles. By the evening of July 9th, Lori knew about the intervention. She knew it was Charles and others. Lori said she needed Alex to stay close because she would see Charles come pick up JJ, and then they would be like Nephi. She knew Charles was coming, and they would be like Nephi. After the text message of being like Nephi, Alex and Lori had a phone call for 56 minutes planning. Alex stayed close with his gun, and they were like Nephi. The day before Charles was killed, Alex was at Lori's house. He brought clothes, his handgun, and 2 extra magazines. Charles let Lori know he'd be able to pick up JJ the next day to take him to school. Alex and Lori knew when and where to do the murder, but they needed to make sure that Charles stayed close and in the house. Charles spent his last night alive on a date. He had been trying to move on. He met with a date from an LDS dating site, and he had told this date about everything. his wife's beliefs, the change to his life insurance. She still wanted to meet, and they had the date. He told her about trying to find a realtor to get a place and his plan to meet up with Adam. She told Charles, why don't you just tell Lori you changed the life insurance policy so you know it, so he, just tell her. But basically, even the date was like, why don't you tell Lori? So she knows it isn't her. The next day, she texted Charles, and she thought Charles had ghosted her. She didn't know Charles was dead. She didn't know until a few months later when she saw it on the news he had been killed on July 11th. The morning of July 11th, Lori was texting with Chad Daybell. We don't have those text messages, but we have the fact that they happened from phone records. Alex was there with his gun, and everybody knew Charles was coming to get JJ for school. Charles left his phone GPS on. You will be able to see it mapped out. You will see his phone leave the house with Lori and what she does with it. Charles texted Adam about that Alex Cox was there. Adam responded, really? I wonder why he never called me back. Charles didn't respond. Adam responded, they're planning something, and Charles responded, absolutely. Adam says he was supposed to stay at Alex's house last night, but Lori probably blocked that, and Charles says what you do is up to you. Adam told Charles he was going to ask Alex to get him and see what he would do. Charles read this message but didn't respond. Adam sent a message saying he and his son were going to play basketball to look for a church leader and talk to him. Charles Vallow never read that text message, but you will learn Lori and Alex did. Charles went to a house that he rented, that he paid for his wife. He got JJ out to the car, and then Lori Vallow created the reason to keep Charles from leaving. She wanted to stop the intervention. She wanted Charles's money. So she took Charles's cell phone and refused to give it back. Lori is why Charles didn't just leave with JJ that morning. Lori is why Alex was able to shoot Charles. Lori is why Charles is dead. The prosecutor does a description of the house. Alex Cox shot Charles Vallow 2 times. The first shot was to his chest and exited out his, let me make sure I get this right, exited out his back. This shot went through his heart. Charles Vallow fell and put his left hand to the wound. A person can take seconds to 2 minutes to die from this type of wound. A person can still talk and move after being shot in the heart. And as Charles lay on the floor, Alex stood at his feet and fired a second shot into his abdomen that exited his left shoulder. The angle was significantly upward. This wound was shored, meaning something hard was behind this wound. So when the bullet exited, the pattern was different. The shored wound showed nothing was accidental about this second shot. Then Lori left the house with Charles's phone and wallet and rental car and JJ and Tylee. She went to Burger King, Walgreens, dropped JJ off to school, and then went back to the house while she was driving she spoke to Alex twice. While driving about, she spoke to Alex twice. They called 3 minutes after she left and 17 minutes after she left. Neither had called 911. In fact, Alex Cox called 911 47 minutes after Lori left. Charles lay dead on the floor of that house for 47 minutes before Alex Cox called 911. Alex Cox staged the scene in that time and made mistakes. You will hear police say they found a bat lying as if Charles was holding it in his right hand and it fell after he was shot. You're going to learn Alex forgot Charles was left-handed. You're going to learn Charles was a semi-professional baseball player who pitched and played left-handed. The bat was on the wrong side. You will hear about an injury to Alex Cox himself. Lori says Charles hit Alex before he was shot. Classic self-defense. But we have to look at the physical evidence or lack of it. The room Charles was shot in had no furniture, only mirrors on the wall. Alex's gun had no blood transfer on it. Alex was allegedly hit on the head by a professional baseball player and never touched the injury. He shot this man twice, walked down the hall, placed the gun in a room, never touching his supposed wound. There is no blood on the floor. Charles strikes Alex on the head, and they grappled on the ground, but there isn't a drop of blood on this ground. Think about that. Charles is claiming a semi-professional baseball player cracked him in the head with a baseball bat as they wrestle on the ground, and there's no blood. Only pooling of blood where Charles was shot. Not a drop of blood on the way to the room where the gun is, not a drop of blood in the room with the gun, not a drop of blood in the kitchen where Alex washed his hands. There are no towels, sheet, clothing, napkins with blood on them, as if Alex was trying to hold his head. You will see on body-worn camera Alex on 911 as he exits the house with sunglasses on his head. You will eventually see Alex touch his head a few times and gets something, I don't know if it's a towel or a napkin, and starts rubbing his head. That is the only bloodied item you will see. Those sunglasses. He was struck on the head by a baseball player, grapples on the ground, shoots Charles, puts away the gun, deals with his injury, and his sunglasses are still on his head? No blood on his gun? No blood on the floor. No damage to the mirrors, bat on the wrong side, lack of physical evidence to support this self-defense claim. The trajectory through Alex's body and through the room, first shot is front and back slightly downward. Could be the gun was held high, hand angle, whatever. But it seems very clear that Charles was standing upright. The second shot trajectory was 13 inches upward. You will hear of the shore wound. The second bullet was next to Charles. It wasn't in like a wall. It wasn't in his body. It was laying next to him. And there was a defect in the wood on the floor where the bullet exited. So that's where they believe it. That's where it exited and left a mark on the wood. This is consistent with Charles on the ground when Alex Cox fired the second shot. This was not self-defense. This was a staged murder scene. And that's true. Because if you think about it, as soon as he's on the ground, I think most people would agree that that is when it becomes attempted murder. Even if a first shot was justified, how do you justify the second shot? But, for anyone wondering, we did have a case of the, how do they call it, like the snow pile murder, attempted murder case. It was an attempted case he was being charged with, where the jury decided that him continuing to fire shots into a man laying on the ground wasn't attempted murder. So, while you and me might agree on that, that doesn't mean the jury will agree on that. Lori and Tylee returned after police arrived. Initially, police believed Lori didn't know her husband was shot and killed. That's what you see behind me. This is Lori coming back. The police at this time didn't know she knew her husband was dead. Lori didn't ask why the police were there, why the fire truck's there, why is her brother sitting on the ground. She asked about her neighbors. They pulled her aside to tell her about the death of Charles, and to their surprise, Lori said she knew. Lori was interviewed by the police. They treated her kindly. She admitted she took the cell phone, and that's why Charles didn't just leave with JJ. She admits she took his phone, and no matter what, wouldn't give it back. Lori claimed Tylee came out with a bat. Charles took it from her, knocking her to the ground. Lori still didn't return the phone. Alex came out and had a scuffle with the bats, and Charles hit Alex with the bat, and Lori still didn't give back the phone. What she did instead was take his phone, go into the kitchen to let her brother be Nephi. She said she heard the gunshot, saw Charles on the ground, and then left. The police didn't even know she still had Charles's phone even during the interview. They asked Lori and Alex to return to the scene, and Lori told the police that she found the phone in the car and gave them Charles's PIN number. After these interviews, what actually happened was Alex and Lori went to Alex's house and went through Charles's phone. Alex took photos of Charles's messages to Adam and sent them to Lori's phone. July 11th, the day of the killing, Lori didn't tell Charles's family, or even Adam, that Charles was dead. The next day, she told Charles's sons from a previous marriage that their dad was dead. Those sons reached out to Kay Woodcock, who had to Google it to see if it was true. So what about the money? $1 million. Lori was the beneficiary when he died. Charles was killed on a Thursday. And Monday, Lori called about the life insurance, and she told the agent Charles was accidentally shot and she was the beneficiary. Both of those are incorrect. 3 days later, she was told she wasn't the beneficiary and they wouldn't tell her who was. 7 days after Lori and Alex killed Charles, Lori texted Chad saying Ned changed the life insurance before they got rid of him. But she will still get $4,000 a month from SS. Lori went through Charles's laptop, found the beneficiary change form, and sent it to Chad and confronted Kay. But Lori knew she was still getting $4,000 a month. Lori conspired with her brother Alex Cox to kill Charles Vallow so they could be like Nephi and better Lori's life. She could be with Chad and have that money. The motive is money and Chad Daybell. You will see many messages and people will establish this murder was premeditated. It was all coming to a head. She would be like Nephi, a justified killing just like the prophet. And the state hopes, the jury will find Lori guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and it's time for lunch. And I mentioned this in the middle of it because it hit me. As much as it seems so obvious to me, and probably you, that if you shoot someone and they're on the ground and they're like crawling away or they can't move or whatever, if you keep firing, well, they're no longer a threat. That's not self-defense. But juries have disagreed with that before. Now, will that play into this case? I doubt it. Obviously, Lori is going to try the self-defense angle, I would assume. That what Alex did was self-defense, and because it's self-defense, it can't be conspiracy to murder. But I don't think she's going to be able to successfully get a jury to go that direction. But that's part 1, and I'm going to combine this with part 2 now. We are back, and it is time for Lori's opening statement. Brace yourselves. Lori says she has been charged with a serious crime, and the only question is if she committed this crime. A conspiracy is an agreement with others to commit a crime. There has to be a plan. The evidence in this case will show that Charles Vallow and I got married in February 2006. It was Lori's 4th marriage and Charles's 3rd. They each had 2 children. The evidence will show is a phrase that she put essentially at the beginning of every sentence that I am not going to repeat. They adopted JJ. They married for 13 years and raised 5 children. Lori was a cosmetologist and worked as a hairstylist. Charles was a life insurance salesman, and they purchased max life insurance policies early in the marriage. Charles was 17 years older than Lori and had a health issue, so his max was $1 million, but the max for Lori was $2 million. They always had life insurance. In 2016, Charles purchased a policy against Lori again, because when the policies lapsed, they bought new ones. Charles used to be a baseball player, a left-handed pitcher, but a right-handed batter. This goes against what the prosecution is saying, so I wonder if there's evidence going to be brought up proving it one way or another. Tylee was 3 years old when Lori and Charles got married, and when she became a teenager, Tylee's attitude towards Charles became so bad they had to seek a therapist to stop them from fighting. And I do want to take a pause here and wonder how much of her attitude towards Charles was manufactured by Lori, especially near the end. Tylee's biological father passed away, and Charles made a call to Social Security. There was an objection, hearsay, sustained. It will show that they got Social Security for Tylee until she was 18 years old. Charles and Tylee's fighting increased in January 2019 and then escalated to physical. Charles and Tylee had increasing arguments. They had their worst argument of all in July 2019. In the March of 2019, Charles pulled JJ out of his school and moved to Texas. Tylee and Lori moved to Texas with them. Tylee, JJ, and Lori moved back to take JJ back to the school in the old district. They rented a house there to do that. In the months of June and July, Charles sent Lori threatening text messages. Lori told Charles he couldn't stay with them in the house he was renting, or as Lori will say, she was renting, because he can't get along with Tylee, and they might fight like they had 3 weeks prior. Charles stayed in a hotel that Lori says she booked. Charles paid for Adam Cox to fly in. Charles planned to pick up JJ and drop him off. Lori says Charles showed up in the rental car she booked for him. Charles texted Adam Cox before entering, and they knew Charles texted Adam Cox before entering, so they both knew Alex Cox was inside. When Charles entered the home, only Lori and JJ were awake. After Charles put JJ in the rental car, Charles came back in the residence to, as she words it, receive his phone, leaving JJ in the running car. He was 7 years old. This is very obviously Lori's attempt to paint him as a bad father. Look, he went to receive his phone and left a 7-year-old in a running car. Not that Lori stole his phone. Charles screamed at Lori when she refused to hand him his phone. Charles' screaming is what woke up Tylee and Alex. Tylee came out with a bat to protect her mother Lori from her stepfather Charles. At this point, Lori starts crying. Tylee and Charles fought over the bat, and after the struggle, Tylee fell on the ground. Charles lifted the bat to strike Tylee. Alex then intervened without a gun. No shirt on. Alex and Charles fought for the bat. Lori helped Tylee up and sent her to JJ in the car. After the struggle, Charles came after Lori with the bat as she went to the kitchen. Alex got his gun and shot Charles in self-defense. Tylee and Lori ran outside without shoes. JJ was trying to get out of the car, and then all three of them drove away. They drove to JJ's school. Lori cries and requests a tissue. They went to Burger King drive-thru because Charles promised that to JJ. Lori went to Walgreens to get flip-flops so her and Tylee could walk JJ into school. Notice she doesn't mention her phone calls during this time to Alex Cox. They returned to the home with police in the driveway. Tylee and Lori were told Charles had died. All three were interviewed separately. Lori and Tylee met with a victim advocate after all three were driven home. They did as instructed by police and tended to Alex's wound. Tylee gave the detective on the scene Charles's phone. No mention of her and Alex going through it and taking screenshots. She says Tylee gave the detective the passcode. The state, I believe, says Lori gave the phone and the passcode, and they are accusing Lori and Alex Cox of going through it. You see how Lori is blaming Tylee. The bat situation only happened because of Tylee. Tylee is the one getting into violent arguments with Charles. It's Tylee who had the phone. It's Tylee who had the lock code. It really looks like she's trying to pin the blame on her dead daughter, that she's convicted of murdering. Lori says the next day she told the police Charles' belongings were still at the hotel, and the police said they would handle it. The police told her they would contact them so Alex could get his gun. Lori claims the police treated this as self-defense, and there was an objection that was sustained. Alex Cox died almost 5 months to the day Charles Vallow died. Alex Cox died from a blood clot in his lung. Objection sustained. Lori is the only person charged with this crime. Objection sustained. And this is where we're getting to her defense from the start. Lori is pitching, you need 2 people for the conspiracy charge. But Alex is dead, and she's the only one charged. So I bet she's going to pitch they can't prove conspiracy because he's dead. The state says money was her motive. Lori says life insurance isn't a crime. Social Security isn't a crime. Self-defense is not a crime. A family tragedy is not a crime. It is a tragedy. If you haven't watched my coverage of her interview this past weekend, I highly recommend it, where we learn a little more about these family tragedies. Apparently, there's a lot of women in this jail who've had family tragedies where people have died and they've gotten charged. Next is Sergeant, I'm going to butcher this name, Erwin Werbisky. He's up for the state. He was dispatched to the shooting scene. He was the first on the scene. He was wearing a body-worn camera. More officers arrived on the scene as he got there. They told 911 to tell Alex to leave with just his phone and hands up. Alex was nonchalant when leaving. He walked out the front door. They told him to walk towards them and sit on the curb. 2 officers on the scene. This officer cleared the house. The other spoke to Alex Cox. He did a full house walkthrough to clear it with the body cam on. He could see Charles Vallow on the right. No furniture in the room. Charles has both of his hands on his sides, no pulse. He had 2 gunshot wounds. He said Charles was dead, but fire was still called to check on him. They have their own process and give a time of death. They ask if he saw projectiles on the ground by the victim. Lori objects, leading, overruled. Yes, he believes he did. He had to clear the house so fire could go in. He believes he located a firearm in a back bedroom. He doesn't remember if he touched it. Fire entered after, tried to render aid, more officers on scene, it's still all recorded. The body cam is on the shoulder, so like right here. So it doesn't follow where his head moves. State wants to show him a video, he recognizes it as his body cam and it's admitted into evidence. Now they are playing the video without audio, and I will say, every live stream for this seemed to be upset with the lack of audio. If you followed the Sarah Boone case or other cases, a lot of audio can get cut because it's different, detectives talking about theories and things like that on the scene. They were cutting a lot of audio in this case. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the cut audio was played later in the case, however. Court cameras obviously have to turn away after entering the house because of the body. He found the weapon. Other officers arrived, fire incoming, fire's working on the victim. He's trying to find an ID and he couldn't find it. There's no wallet. The court streams show the video again as it shows Alex Cox sitting on the side of the road, rubbing his head, sunglasses on his head. Witness says Alex Cox was extremely calm. Witnesses identify 2 screenshots from the body cam. First shows Charles's body as he checks the pulse. The second has fire working on him as they walk in. Alex was holding the phone when he came out. He never noticed another phone in the house or on the ground near Charles. This witness put up the crime scene tape, and that was the end of his involvement. And now we get Lori's cross-examination. Lori asks his name because she likes to get that right. Lori asked about the witness calling Alex calm. Lori asked if he was nonchalant because the witness... Asked if... Alex was nonchalant because that's the word the witness used. He said he doesn't remember saying that, but he did. Witness says people act differently in situations. Witness can't give people psychological evaluations, though. Lori asked why didn't he do CPR? He said because it was evident he was deceased. And Lori says, and that is not your protocol? Witness says it isn't protocol to do CPR until fire arrives. When it will make it worse, like with apparent gunshot wounds to the chest. If you start pumping on his chest, he will lose a lot more blood at a rapid pace. When the 911 operator told her brother to do CPR, well, the same thing happened. Witness says that depends on when the call came in, but possibly if he had that wound, which is kind of opening it up that was 911 called before the second shot. I have to say, the wording there was leaving something open. He cleared the house before fire. He wasn't looking for ID when he cleared the house. Lori asked if he was told only Alex and Charles in the house. He said he doesn't recall. Even if he was, you still have to clear a house, right? Lori asked if he has any crime scene experience. He says just my 20 years as a police officer. Lori asked if casings were to the left or the right. He says he didn't say. Lori asked east or west. He says he didn't say. He did find a handgun. He was asked if he could tell where the gunshot came from. He said from the way he was laying, where the feet were at. He said he doesn't recall if he saw a projectile on the baseboard. He believed Charles was deceased when he enters the home. Fire takes over for CPR on top of the gunshot wound. So fire was doing CPR. Lori asked, is that normal protocol? And he said he doesn't know their protocol. He then went outside to put up crime scene tape. He doesn't remember how long he was there. He doesn't know if he had discussions with detectives on scene. He imagines he spoke to a superior before leaving. He thinks he saw Lori arriving just as he was leaving, and there were 2 wounds on Charles. Lori asked how he knew, and he said he saw them. He doesn't know how many times he's spoken to the case agent about this case, maybe 5 times in passing. Lori asked how many times he emailed or texted or phone calls with the case agent, and there was an objection, relevance. The judge lets him answer it, and he says he doesn't know. He wrote his report by the end of the shift. He doesn't think he changed it. He reviewed it, and it appears to be the same. Redirect. Alex Cox was calm and collected after shooting someone. If you check for a pulse as someone is believed to be deceased, you aren't to touch the body, as it is basically a crime scene. Giving CPR would alter the crime scene. The gun was part of the crime scene, so he didn't touch it. A CAD report details the 911 call and his dispatch and leaving, and it's provided to him. The 911 call happened at 8:36. He was dispatched at 8:37, and he arrived at 8:43. So earlier than his memory. He left the scene at 5:51. This information is brief, so detectives know what they are walking into, if anything was touched, and what was found. Jury has no questions, which I don't know if I mentioned this in this video or my previous ones. In Arizona, the jury can ask questions. Another name I will butcher. Robert Krotheim is the next witness. He works at a courthouse now, but he was a police officer at the time of the crime. He was dispatched to the shooting scene wearing body cam. He tells the story of Alex walking out calmly, no difficulty walking or sitting down, not sweating, not jittery. Injury on the right side. He had about an inch laceration. Sound starts playing in the courtroom that nobody seems to know where it's from, and people look confused, including the witness, until it stops. Alex was offered medical treatment, but didn't want it. They ask if he thought he should override that. He says yes. They ask if anything due to the demeanor and actions made it appears so he was bad off, he needed treatment. And the officer responded, oh, 0, none. So that's weird to me. So maybe I'm thinking too much into it, but the officer says he believed he should override Alex and get him medical treatment, but not due to his demeanor or injury, which makes me wonder either the witness said the wrong answer, or is he alluding to the fact that on the scene he thought maybe Alex could have staged the injury? And maybe that should have been, looked at and cataloged. And Alex, he's bleeding and doesn't want looked at after an injury to the head. It seems a little shady to me. Lori and Tylee showed up, and he got Lori's ID, and he IDs her in the courtroom. He knew at this time the deceased was her husband. He didn't ask if Charles lived there, which he did ask, but he says he didn't. He said Lori was calm and nonchalant. Lots of police cars, a fire truck, and an ambulance was around. Alex Cox was across the street where Lori was. Originally, she walked up to Alex Cox, and they told her to go back. She never asked about her brother. Never asked if her brother needed medical treatment for being hit by a bat. She never asked about the emergency vehicles and why they were there. It's all on camera. After talking to Lori, he went back to stand by Alex Cox, and next up is the body cam video as evidence. No audio except for the interaction with Lori Vallow, and the video is played. They asked why the officer pulled his weapon on Alex Cox, and he said because someone was killed and they had to make sure Alex wasn't a threat. Alex wasn't placing anything on his injury as he walked out. It's all muted at this point, by the way. There's no audio. He had the sunglasses on his head when he came out. Alex Cox was moved so we could hear him due to the loud fire truck that pulled up to already go inside. So very quickly, fire was inside. He said he doesn't remember whose truck is in the driveway. He was trying to control the scene and keep people away from the house. Someone does walk up and get sent away. Tylee and Lori walk up and are sent away. He knew Lori was his wife. Anything that takes time in a case, the detectives do it. An ambulance arrived. He doesn't remember specifics on the time of the 911 call or when he was dispatched. It only took 4 or 5 minutes to get to the scene after the call. The tape goes on. More people arrive on the scene. And finally, we get audio when talking to Lori. Asks if her husband lives there and wants a license. It is, honestly, it's so sad to see Tylee there after everything we know. Lori was just blaming her in her opening statement. We got information from Tylee, but the audio is cut for that. The video is done. He briefed detectives what he learned. He told them he didn't tell Lori that her husband was dead. He believed she didn't know he was dead because he was under the understanding that this just happened and she arrived back on the scene. Alex Cox also made statements that made him believe that Lori wasn't present. He remained with Alex Cox after and transported him to the police station. Alex was calm during transport and they talked about unrelated things. Oh boy. Lori is up for cross. She asks his name to not get it wrong. Again, I think this is like an endearing thing for her. I don't think it works because she gets their name and then never uses it again, at least so far. So it's like, Alex was calm exiting the house. Lori says he was told Alex composed himself and called 911. He says he doesn't remember being told that, but sure, he thinks maybe he was. Maybe, he wasn't sure. Alex was calm the whole time. The officer said the scene wasn't chaotic. People weren't running around screaming. The officers were calm. The detectives were calm. Lori asked, your buddy Wiz was calm, because in the previous statement, he referred to the one officer as Wiz, because that's the name he normally refers to him as. Again, Lori's trying to normalize herself by using that, I guess. The other officer said, yes, the scene was calm when Lori arrived. Lori says, wouldn't have been out of character for her to not be calm when everyone else was calm. So Lori's trying to explain away her demeanor. And it's an objection, speculation, sustained. I would argue that, no. If you come home, you know your husband is shot, your brother is on the side of the road with an injury, you shouldn't be calm just because everyone else is calm. And if you don't know your husband is shot and you see him injured, you know something happened, you know you're supposed to be there that morning, again, you shouldn't be calm. You should be worrying and asking questions that you're not asking. Anyway, back to the actual witness. Alex was holding a towel to his head, an inch cut, a small knot, bleeding a little. Lori asks, but would you not call it a goose egg? And the witness says, tomato, tomato. Alex didn't ask for medical treatment, and he thinks he asked 3 times. He didn't think Alex needed medical treatment, but EMTs were right there. Lori asked, says he called Alex nonchalant, not a lot of emotion. Lori says, is that your typical demeanor? The witness says, depends. Lori says, well, if that is your demeanor in court, and this is stressful, that means that could be Alex's normal demeanor. Lori says, wouldn't that make sense for Alex to be nonchalant? Objection, speculation, judge allows it. She asks the question again, but Lori goes a bit on a rant in that question this time. So there's an objection for compound question sustained, and Lori just moves on. Lori asks why she had to park across the street. He says, I don't know. The witness doesn't know why she parked across the street. Lori said she had to park across the street. He says, no, there were multiple other places she could park. Lori starts about how when she parked so close to the scene to talk to him, objection, testifying, sustained. Lots of emergency vehicles on scene, but it was calm. Objection, asked and answered, sustained. It was hot that day, and the witness is like, yeah, maybe, again, this is what she thinks normalizes her because it has no relevance how hot it was. He recounts the time frames. Lori asks what Alex and him talked about in the police car. Lori says there is a video of that we haven't seen, the video of them in the police car. Lori asks if Alex says he felt out of it because he was hit with a bat. I think it's what she was going for. We heard the word hit. Objection, hearsay, sustained. Officer says he worked on his report and finished it by the end of his shift at 4 o'clock. No revisions. He said red liquid on the rag in his report was worded that way because it was not tested for blood, but Alex was bleeding from the head. He spoke to detectives. He doesn't remember someone putting a phone in an evidence bag. Lori says she saw on the body cam that happening and wanted to know if he remembered. Objection. Testifying. And the judge sustains and explains she can only ask questions. She can't talk about what she saw. That's called testifying. The officer was told to take Alex uncuffed to the station. A detective then took over the interview. Asked if Alex could have been in shock. Objection, sustained. Lori asked how long he bled. He says he didn't see it. He didn't know if he was bleeding when he walked out because he didn't look. He didn't see that he was bleeding until they moved him farther down the street. This officer never entered the house. Lori asked about his discussion with other detectives. Objection, hearsay. She tries to ask about Tylee with a bat. Objection, hearsay. She asked if Alex said he was hit in the head with a bat. Objection, hearsay. The detective says he was told how he got the injury, but didn't know for sure that's how he got it, because he didn't see it. He was told how he got it. She tries another question about how he knew that answer, but the judge says that would be hearsay. Lori asks about a neighbor coming up to her and what they wanted. Objection, hearsay. And at this point, the judge seems sick of it and just calls for an afternoon break. So I thought I'd be getting this done in 2 videos, but there's an afternoon break I didn't take into account. So I guess I'm going to be merging 3. Yeah, Lori is... I really hope the prosecution can mention that Tylee was murdered and Lori is convicted of the murder. I think that is very important because she's trying to put blame on her. There's also a world where I could see Lori wants to mention it to again try to put blame on Tylee, because Lori's still saying she's innocent. Maybe she hopes she can tell the jury that, like, they had to kill Tylee in self-defense too. I mean, it seems like she wants Tylee to be the fall person here. And that kind of surprised me. I was kind of expecting her to be more like, yeah, Alex did all of this on his own. I thought that would be her angle going in. I didn't think she'd have such a focus on Tylee. But I guess she just hates her kids, right? That's evident. She murdered them. Lori is back up and asking what the witness told detectives. Objection, hearsay. Lori has it explained to her that his out-of-court statements are hearsay. He names the detectives he thinks were briefed, but he's not sure. He talked to them under a minute. He met with the prosecutor about 2 weeks ago to go over testimony for about an hour total. He reviewed the report before testifying today. He managed the scene while there. He sent a man away and sent Lori and her daughter back to their car. Lori asked about him talking to his supervisor. Objection, relevance, and hearsay. Overruled. Talked less than a minute to brief his supervisor. Lori asked about less than a minute twice before objection, asked and answered, sustained. Lori asked about less than a minute again to brief the detectives. Objection, asked and answered, but judge allowed it. He said yes. He briefed them quicker. Then he wrote the report, which obviously is quicker to talk to someone than write a report. 8 to 10 miles to the police department, 10 to 15 minutes. He doesn't remember where he parks. Alex was unhandcuffed and taken into an interrogation room. He didn't see his supervisor at the station. Redirect. The witness is asked about saying Alex Cox was calm, and that calmness being compared to the witness being calm. They asked if the witness just shot someone. He said no. Did the fire department just shoot someone? No. Had the other officer just shot someone? No. So it isn't the same to compare them. He had his gun drawn on Alex because Alex possibly could have been a threat, and Alex remained nonchalant during that. He said he was testified before, and this is just answering questions, explaining why he's calm. Alex didn't have his hand on his head when he left the house. Alex Cox was rubbing his head at one point, only saw him use the towel, and that remained mostly white. You could watch body cam to see how long he touched his head, and then it was white. Some more time frame questions that truly, at this moment, aren't a major deal. It's just kind of nitpicking, to be honest, in my opinion. The next witness is up. He works for the fire department. This man was a CPR instructor as well as working for the fire department. You give CPR to someone if their heart isn't beating. He believes 911 will walk people through how to give CPR. If someone is given CPR, you can see evidence that it was done, such as a depression on the skin. He has to perform CPR before on people who were shot and blood came out. He was interviewed by police, making it more memorable in this case. They were maybe 30 seconds away when they got the call. He didn't see anyone giving the patient CPR when he entered. There wasn't a lot of blood around they needed to worry about avoiding. So basically, he's reiterating something that's been brought up previously. There wasn't a bunch of blood in the hallway from a fight or from a bat fight or whatever. His first impression walking in was no moaning or moving. He thought Charles might be dead. No obvious signs of life. He did an assessment for a pulse, breathing, and after all the checks, again, no sign of life. He tried CPR. He was told someone was trying to do CPR before they arrived, which would have increased a likelihood of survival. They show a photo of people working on Charles. They don't obviously show it to the stream, and he identifies them. This witness is the one that did the CPR. He said he didn't see a depression from someone else doing compressions, and he felt the initial crack and crunch you hear if you start CPR for the first time correctly. He did it about a minute before the equipment was brought out. He made sure to not cut the bullet holes in the shirt. The EKG was flat. They rolled him in the other side to have a better view of the exit wounds. There were 2 wounds on the back. And he said after this, he could find the depression he made while doing CPR. He had blood on his gloves after doing CPR. After doing CPR, there was much more blood that came out. They called the death on the scene. The skin on Charles's back was mottling because blood hadn't been circulating, and that shows up over time. Remember, these people are arriving on the scene quickly. What wasn't quick, according to the prosecution, was the actual response from Alex calling 911. He waited a long amount of time. The lack of depression on the chest when he started makes him believe he was the first to do CPR. And they did continue the CPR after the modeling, but they ended up calling it. They brought up the chart for when they called it. He sees it looks like 8:48 a.m. is when they stopped doing work, and that's probably when they called it. So it wasn't that long after they arrived on the scene. It was maybe 5 minutes of actively working before they called it. Once called, they gathered the things they could and left the body. Certain things like the EKG sticker things are left on the body. He noticed no injuries to the man outside by the driveway when he was going by. Someone Alex Cox's size would have been able to do compressions correctly, and there would have been a depression if he did it correctly. He says Charles Vallow was dead in his opinion before they entered the house. It was highly unlikely anyone performed CPR before this man arrived. And then Lori is asked for her cross, and she says it'll be a longer one, so they end it for the day. Yes, the day is ended because Lori, I can just imagine the questions she's going to have, and I imagine there's going to be a lot of objections, because I picture Lori is going to have her own medical ideals she's going to try to push on this witness. That's my speculation for the start of tomorrow. But we did get a good glimpse into Lori's defense, it seems. It wasn't a plot. Tylee is the one that was causing issues with Charles, and obviously that wasn't a plot. That was Tylee doing it. And, I mean, sure, she went to Burger King and Walgreens after knowing her husband was shot, but that's because Charles promised JJ that Burger King, and they needed to get flip-flops to walk JJ into school. Yeah, I don't think it works. She tried her, waterworks attempt. I don't think it played out well. To me, it was very forced. She's trying this, I want to make sure I get your name right type thing with, a lighter voice. I mean, all the witnesses have been men so far, and I'm curious when there's a woman up, if her, voice changes. But that's all the information for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm going to try to get this out as soon as possible. If you like the content, like, comment, subscribe. I am planning to do this again tomorrow and try to get it out as soon as possible once it ends. I do want to say that I have been around someone who's sick to the point that they are bedbound, and I am just hoping I don't get it. So here's hoping, because I want to cover this case. And right now I'm not feeling sick. My throat's a little sore. My fingers hurt a little bit from the typing. I'll get some pain relief stuff, and hopefully that'll get me through the trial. But I will see you in the next video. Again, this trial is going to be Monday through Thursday until it ends. So it's going to be quite a mess. And you can find this, or many live streams. I think they're all using the same feed from the courthouse, but there are many different live streams with many different chats. If you do catch it live, just understand there is a delay. Just understand that sidebars are muted. So it might not be the most entertaining to watch, so maybe best to look up highlights if you are wanting to see those moments if you don't catch it live, or enjoy my content where I cover it and know whether you want to go back and what moments you want to see. Until next time.